Captain Thrix pressed his four-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of his ship's bridge. The Quiet Prophet had seen better days, but it was still the best salvage vessel in this part of the galaxy. Its sensors could find metal and technology where others saw only empty space. "Captain, we have something big on the screens," called out Zephyk from his station. The engineer's tentacles moved quickly over the controls, his green skin turning, pale with excitement. "It's not like anything in our database." Thrix walked over to look at the main screen. The Veil Nebula stretched out before them, purple and blue gases swirling in the darkness. Hidden in those clouds was an old battlefield where two great fleets had fought long ago. Most salvagers avoided this place because it was far from trade routes, and the pickings were usually poor. But today was different. There, Zephyk pointed, with one tentacle. "Do you see it?" Thrix saw it. Floating among the broken pieces of ancient ships was something that made his breath catch. It was sleek and deadly looking, like a knife made of metal and shadow. The ship was dark, but its shape spoke of speed and power. "Run it through the identification system," Thrix ordered. Quilm, their analyst, worked at her station. Her large eyes grew even larger as data filled her screen. "Captain, this is impossible." "What do you mean, impossible?" "The ship design, the metal composition, even the way it's built. Everything points to one origin." Quilm's voice shook as she spoke. "Terra." The bridge went silent. Every crew member knew that name. Terra was the Deathworld, the planet so dangerous that just living there was considered impossible by most. Galactic standards. The hegemony had destroyed it 300 years ago because they were afraid of what its people might become. "Are you sure?" Thrix asked. "The computer is sure," Quilm replied. "It's showing a 98% match to known Terran technology. But, Captain, that can't be right. Terra was glassed centuries ago. Nothing survived." Zephyk's tentacles curled with fear. "Captain, Terra was classified as a Class 15 death world. Do you know what that means?" Thrix nodded slowly. He had heard the stories. Class 15 worlds were planets where everything tried to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. Most species couldn't survive on a Class 1 world for more than a few days without protection. Class 15 was supposed to be impossible. The humans who lived there, Zephyk continued. They had to become something else just to survive each day. Their technology, their weapons, their ships, everything was built to survive hell itself. "But they're all dead," said Quilm. "The hegemony made sure of that." Thrix stared at the ship on the screen. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Even floating dead in space, it looked dangerous. He could see weapon ports along its hull and armor that looked thick enough to stop anything. "Bring us closer," he ordered. "Captain, maybe we should report this to the authorities," Quilm suggested. "And let them take our find?" Thrix laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Do you know how much Terran technology is worth? We could buy our own planet with what's on that ship." The Quiet Prophet moved slowly toward the derelict vessel. As they got closer, they could see more details. The ship's name was written in strange letters that their computer couldn't translate properly. Scorch marks covered the hull, telling stories of battles fought far from home. "Life support readings?" Thrix asked. "Nothing," Zephyk reported. "The ship is cold and dark. No power signatures, no life signs. It's been dead for a long time." But as they prepared to dock, Quilm made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain, I'm reading something strange. The ship's core systems, they're not completely cold. There's a very small power source still running deep inside." "Emergency systems?" Thrix suggested. "Maybe. Or maybe someone left something running on purpose." They docked with the Terran ship using magnetic clamps. The airlocks connected with a grinding sound that echoed through both vessels. Thrix suited up with his crew, checking their weapons and breathing gear twice. "Remember," he told them as they prepared to enter, Humans were survivors. If they built something to last, it probably did. Watch for traps, automated defenses, anything that might still be active. The airlock cycled, and they stepped into the human ship. The first thing that hit them was the smell. Even through their filters, they could detect something different about the air. It wasn't stale like most dead ships. It smelled maintained. The corridors were wider than they expected, built for creatures that stood upright and moved on two legs. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the walls, giving everything a red glow. The walls themselves were covered in strange marks and symbols that their translators couldn't read. "These markings," Quilm whispered, running her scanner over them. "They're not random. They're names, I think. Thousands and thousands of names." They moved deeper into the ship, their footsteps echoing strangely in the empty halls. Every surface showed signs of use and care. This wasn't a ship that had been abandoned quickly. Someone had spent time here, keeping things working, maintaining systems. In the main corridor, they found something that made them all stop and stare. Carved into the metal wall in letters large enough for anyone to see were words in the human language. Their translators worked slowly, piece by piece. "In memory of Earth. In memory of the 6 billion. In memory of the promise we made." "What promise?" Zephyk asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, they heard something that froze their blood. From somewhere deep in the ship came the sound of machinery starting up. Lights began to flicker on in sequence, moving away from them down the corridor like a wave, and then, carried through the ship's communication system, came a voice speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Welcome aboard the Wandering Star. I've been waiting for you." The voice was calm, patient, and unmistakably human. Somewhere in this dead ship from a dead world, someone was very much alive. The voice came from speakers hidden in the walls, speaking their language with perfect pronunciation. Captain Thrix felt his crew move closer together, their weapons ready but uncertain what to aim at. "Please don't be afraid," the voice continued. "I know this must be surprising. My name is Tae-ho. I'm the ship's engineer. I've been alone here for quite some time." Thrix found his voice. "How long?" There was a pause, as if the human was thinking. 53 years, 4 months, and 16 days. But who's counting?" The lights continued to come on as they moved, through the ship, always staying just ahead of them. It was clear they were being guided somewhere specific. The corridors branched off in many directions, but the lit path led them deeper into the vessel's heart. "Where are you taking us?" Quilm asked, her scanner beeping as it tried to make sense of the ship's layout. "To the engineering section. It's where I spend most of my time. Don't worry about getting lost. The ship will guide you back when you're ready to leave." Zephyk's tentacles curled nervously. "Captain, this could be a trap. Humans are known for being clever." "I can hear you, friend," Tae-ho's voice said with what sounded like amusement. "And yes, we are clever. But if I wanted to hurt you, there are much easier ways than inviting you for tea." They walked for several minutes through corridors lined with those strange markings. As they got deeper into the ship, the walls became more elaborate. Images were carved into the metal, scenes of a blue and green world, pictures of humans doing everyday things like farming and building and teaching children. "These pictures," Quilm said, stopping to examine one that showed humans standing around a large tree. "They're beautiful. Is this Terra?" "Earth," Tae-ho corrected gently. "We called it Earth. And yes, those are memories of home. I carved most of them myself over the years. It helps pass the time." The engineering section was vast, filled with machines that hummed with quiet power. But what drew their attention was the man sitting at a central console. He was tall, even sitting down, with white hair and skin marked by age. His eyes were sharp and blue, and when he smiled at them, it was warm and genuine. "Welcome, Teho," said, standing up. He moved carefully, like someone whose body had grown stiff from years of careful work. "I apologize for not greeting you properly at the airlock. These old bones don't move as fast as they used to." He was completely human, but somehow different from the pictures they had seen in their databases. There was something in the way he held himself, a sense of strength that went deeper than muscle and bone. "You're really human?" Thrix asked. "Last I checked." Teho smiled. "Though I suppose after 50 years alone in space, I might have forgotten how to be properly human." "But Earth was destroyed," Quilm said. "The hegemony glassed the entire planet. No one survived." Teho's smile faded, replaced by something harder. "No one survived on Earth. That's true. But humans had already spread to other worlds by then. When the hegemony came, some of us escaped. Not many, but enough." He gestured for them to sit on benches that folded out from the walls. The furniture was designed for human proportions, but it worked well enough for his guests. "This ship," Teho continued, "was part of the evacuation fleet, but we had a different mission than the others. While they ran to find new homes, we stayed behind to remember." "Remember what?" Zephic asked. Teho walked to a large screen on the wall. With a few touches, it came alive, showing images and text. Everything. Every person who died when Earth burned. Every city that was destroyed. Every child who never got to grow up. All 6 billion of them. The screen showed names scrolling by in endless lists. Human names in the strange letters of their language. But the translators worked now, turning them into sounds the aliens could understand. "This is why I'm here," Teho said quietly. "To make sure they're not forgotten. To make sure their stories survive. And to wait." "Wait for what?" Thrix asked, though he was beginning to suspect he knew the answer. "For the others to come back. My people, Captain. The ones who escaped Earth's destruction. They scattered to the far edges of the galaxy, but they promised they would return someday. When they were strong enough. When they were ready." Teho touched another control and the screen changed to show star maps. Red dots marked locations throughout the galaxy, some close, others impossibly far away. "These are the last known positions of human settlement ships. Some went to worlds in the inner rim, others headed for the galactic edge. A few went even further, to places where no one else dared to go. But that was 300 years ago," Quilm said. "They could be anywhere by now. They could be dead." "They could be," Teho agreed. "But I don't think they are. Humans are very good at surviving, you see. It's what we learned on Earth. Our world tried to kill us every single day, so we learned to be tough. We learned to adapt. We learned to never give up." He turned back to them, and his eyes held something that made them all uncomfortable. Not threat exactly, but certainty. The absolute confidence of someone who had never doubted what he was doing. "You want to know what it was like on Earth?" Teho asked. "Imagine a world where the air itself can kill you if the wind changes direction, where animals larger than your ship hunt in packs, where the weather can go from freezing to boiling in a single day, where every plant, every insect, every microbe is trying to find a way to end your life." He smiled, but it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Now imagine spending 1,000,000 years on that world. Imagine your species learning to fight everything, including each other, just to see another sunrise. Imagine what kind of people that would create." The aliens looked at each other nervously. They were beginning to understand why the hegemony had been afraid of humanity. "But we didn't just learn to fight," Teho continued. "We learned to think. We learned to plan. We learned to work together when we had to. And most importantly, we learned to wait." He gestured around the engineering bay at the humming machines and carefully maintained systems. "I've spent 50 years keeping this ship ready, keeping the memories safe, keeping the promise alive. Because somewhere out there, my people are doing the same thing. They're surviving, they're growing stronger, And someday they'll come home. Home to what? Thrix asked. Earth is gone. Home to justice, Tejo said simply. The hegemony destroyed our world because they were afraid we might become dangerous. Well, they were right to be afraid. We just needed time to become everything they feared we could be. As if on cue, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Not emergency alarms, but something else. Something that sounded almost like music. Tejo's face lit up with a joy so pure it was frightening. They're here, he whispered. After all these years, they're finally here. Who's here? Quilm asked, but even as she spoke, she could see new contacts appearing on the ship's sensors. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Ships were emerging from hyperspace all around them, and every single one was human. The alarms stopped, replaced by a sound the aliens had never heard before. It was music, but not like any music from their worlds. It was complex and emotional, filled with sadness and hope at the same time. Tejo closed his eyes and listened, with a smile on his face. Mozart, he said softly. Requiem in D minor. We always played it when the family came home. Family? Captain Thrix asked, watching the sensor readings with growing alarm. The ships approaching weren't just a few scattered vessels. They were a fleet, organized and purposeful. The other Guardians, Tejo explained. He was moving around his engineering station, touching controls with practiced ease. Did you think I was the only one? Oh no, Captain. The wandering star is much larger than you've seen. As he spoke, new sections of the ship began to come online. Lights flickered to life in areas that had seemed empty and dead. The gentle hum of machinery grew louder as systems activated throughout the vessel. How big is this ship? Zephyk asked, his tentacles curling with worry. Big enough, Tejo replied. We built her to last centuries if needed. Each section is self-contained, with its own life support and power. We learned that from Earth. Never put all your eggs in one basket. A new voice came through the ship's communication system, speaking in the same perfect galactic standard. Tejo, my old friend, it's good to hear your voice again. Bayul Ray, Tejo answered with obvious affection. How long has it been since we spoke face to face? 12 years, 3 months, the voice replied. But who's counting? I see we have guests. Salvagers from a Kethran vessel. They found us floating in the debris field. I thought it was time for proper introductions. Through the ship's speakers, they could hear the woman laughing. After 50 years of hiding, you decide to reveal ourselves to scavengers? You always did have interesting timing. Where are you? Quilm asked, looking around as if expecting to see another human appear. Communications section, level 7, Bayul answered. I've been monitoring galactic communications for the past 50 years, learning languages, tracking fleet movements, listening to the galaxy talk. It's been quite educational. Another voice joined the conversation, this one deeper and more serious. Tejo, the fleet is in position. Jinwu's archives are ready for upload to the command ships. Thank you, Nara, Tejo replied. Everyone, I'd like you to meet our tactical officer. She's been studying hegemony military doctrine for the past 5 decades. Studying it? Thrix asked. Learning it, Nara corrected. Every battle formation, every strategic principle, every weakness they've shown in 300 years of conquest. Earth may be gone, but human memory is long. More voices began to join the conversation as other sections of the ship came online. Jinwu introduced himself as the ship's historian and archivist. Minho spoke from the Strategic Planning Center. Youngsu checked in from what he called the Cultural Preservation Ward. The aliens realized with growing amazement that the Wandering Star wasn't just a ship. It was a floating city, with dozens of humans living in different sections, each focused on their own specialized task. How many of you are there? Quilm asked. 47, Tejo answered. We started with 50, but we've lost 3 over the years. Old age, mostly. We've lived longer than we expected when we started this mission. 50 years, Zephyk whispered. You've all been alone for 50 years. Not alone, corrected Bulray. Separated, but not alone. We talk to each other every day. We share meals over the communication system. We argue about philosophy and poetry and whether human civilization was worth saving. And what did you decide? Thrix asked. There was a moment of silence before Jinwoo answered. We decided that the question was wrong. It's not whether our civilization was worth saving. It's whether the galaxy is worth saving from what our civilization could become. What do you mean? Quilm asked. But even as she spoke, she could see more ships appearing on the sensors. The human fleet was massive, stretching across space in formations that spoke of military precision and overwhelming force. Come with me, Taeho said, leading them to a lift that hadn't been working when they first arrived. Let me show you what we've been protecting. The lift carried them up through sections of the ship they hadn't known existed. Through transparent walls, they could see vast chambers filled with servers and data storage units. Other chambers held manufacturing equipment, medical facilities, and what looked like laboratories. This entire ship is a backup, Taeho explained as they rose. Every piece of human knowledge, every cultural artifact, every scientific discovery, we saved it all. They passed through a section where the walls were covered with artwork, paintings and sculptures from Earth, recreated from memory by artists who had never seen their home world. But it's not just about the past, Taeho continued. We've been working, you see, improving, learning, taking everything that made humans survivors and making it better. The lift stopped at what appeared to be the ship's command center, but it was unlike any bridge the aliens had ever seen. Instead of a single command chair, there were dozens of workstations, each one monitoring different aspects of the galaxy. Welcome to the real bridge, said a woman who was waiting for them. She was younger than Taeho, with black hair and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. I'm Hai-Jin. I coordinate our strategic planning. Strategic planning for what? Thrix asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. Hai-Jin gestured to the main screen, which showed a map of the galaxy. Hundreds of stars were marked in different colors. Red for hegemony strongholds, blue for human settlements, yellow for neutral worlds. For the liberation of the galaxy, she said simply. The hegemony destroyed our world because they were afraid of what we might become. They were right to be afraid. We've spent 3 centuries becoming exactly what they feared, a species that refuses to bow to tyranny. Liberation? Quilm asked. You mean war? I mean justice, Hai-Jin replied, but not the kind you might expect. We're not the hegemony. We don't destroy worlds because we're afraid of them. We do something much more dangerous. We give people hope. She touched a control, and the screen showed news feeds from across the galaxy. Protests on hegemony worlds, slave revolts on the Outer Rim, independence movements on a dozen different planets. For 300 years we've been out there, Hai-Jin continued. Not hiding, not running, but working, inspiring, teaching, showing oppressed peoples that the hegemony can be defeated. That freedom is possible. And now? Thrix asked. Now we keep our promise, said a new voice. The man who entered the bridge was clearly the leader. He moved with authority, and when he spoke, the others listened. I'm Min-Ho, overall coordinator of the Human Return Fleet, and you, my alien friends, are about to witness the end of the hegemony's reign of terror. Through the viewports, they could see the human fleet taking formation, ships that looked like they could crack planets, moving with the precision of a species that had learned warfare from a world that tried to kill them every day. What promise? Quilm whispered. Min-Ho smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had waited a very long time for this moment. The promise we made when Earth burned, that we would return, that we would remember. and that we would make sure it never happened again. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you made enemies of the children of a deathworld. The human fleet spread across space like a dark tide. From the bridge of the wandering star, Captain Thrix watched ships that defied everything he thought he knew about space warfare. They moved in perfect coordination, each vessel taking its position as if following a plan decades in the making. "How many ships?" he asked quietly. 2,347 combat vessels, Minho answered without looking at any displays. Plus support ships, hospital ships, and civilian transports carrying the families who want to see this moment. Families? Quilm asked. "We never stopped being human," Jin explained. "We found love, had children, built communities on 100 different worlds. But we never forgot what we lost. And we never stopped preparing for this day." On the main screen, data flowed in streams of numbers and tactical displays. The humans had been monitoring galactic communications, tracking hegemony fleet movements, and cataloging the positions of every important military installation. "You've been planning this for 300 years, Zephyk said. It wasn't a question. Planning, preparing, and positioning, Minho confirmed. "Do you know what humans learned on Earth? That survival isn't just about being strong. It's about being smart. It's about being patient. And it's about striking at exactly the right moment." A new alarm sounded, different from the others. This one was sharp and urgent. "Hegemony response fleets are mobilizing," reported Bayul Ray from her communication station. "They're pulling ships from 6 different sectors. Looks like they're finally taking us seriously." "How many?" Minho asked. 3 fleets so far. More coming. They're converging on the old battle site coordinates." Minho nodded calmly. "Right on schedule. Nara, are your tactical predictions holding true?" "Perfectly," came Nara's voice through the speakers. "Hegemony Tactical Doctrine 77 Alpha. They're doing exactly what our models said they would do. They think they're fighting a conventional invasion force. But you're not," Thrix said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. "No." Minho smiled. "We're not here to conquer territory. We're here to end a system. And you can't fight a system with ships alone." The main screen changed to show news feeds from across the galaxy. The aliens watched in amazement as planet after planet erupted in coordinated uprisings. Slave colonies declared independence. Oppressed populations rose against their hegemony governors. Even some hegemony member worlds were seeing protests and civil unrest. "You did this?" Quilm asked. "We inspired it," Jin corrected. "For 3 centuries we've been out there, not as conquerors, but as teachers, showing people that the hegemony could be resisted. That freedom was possible, that even a species from a death world could be destroyed if everyone worked together. And if everyone worked against them," Minho added. "We learned something important on Earth. The most dangerous. Predator isn't the strongest or the fastest. It's the one that turns the entire ecosystem against its enemies." Through the bridge windows, they could see the first hegemony ships arriving. Massive dreadnoughts that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, their weapons capable of cracking moons. Against the human fleet, they looked wrong somehow. Too big, too slow, built for intimidation rather than efficiency. "They still think this is about force," Nara's voice observed. "Look at their formation. Classic intimidation pattern. They want us to see their big guns and surrender." "They don't understand humans very well," Tejo said, joining them on the Y bridge. The old engineer looked tired but determined. "We've never surrendered to anything. Not to the storms on Earth. Not to the predators. Not to each other. And certainly not to bullies with big ships." "What happens now?" Thrix asked. "Now we show them what we learned," Minho replied. He touched a control on his chair, and his voice went out to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is Coordinator Minho. Operation Homecoming is now active. Remember, we are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. The human fleet began to move, but not in any pattern the aliens recognized. Instead of forming battle lines, the ships spread out, some accelerating toward the hegemony fleet, others moving to flank positions that seemed impossible to reach in time. "Your ships are fast," Zephyk observed. "Fast and efficient," Heijin agreed. "We built them in the deep dark between stars, where every gram of matter and every unit of energy has to be perfect. No waste, no excess, just pure function. Unlike hegemony ships," Nara added, "built on conquered worlds by slave labor, designed to look impressive rather than work well. We've been studying their weaknesses for 300 years. The first engagement began at the edge of sensor range. The aliens watched in amazement as human ships danced around the massive hegemony dreadnoughts, their weapons striking with surgical precision. Where hegemony weapons were designed to destroy planets, human weapons were designed to disable ships without killing their crews. "You're not trying to destroy them," Quilm realized. "Destruction is wasteful," Minho explained. "Those ships were built by enslaved populations. Why would we destroy the work of people we're trying to free? Better to capture them, free their crews, and put the ships to better use." "But the hegemony destroyed Earth," Thrix protested. "Don't you want revenge?" Minho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of loss. "Captain, do you know what the word human means in our old language? It means wise. Not strong, not fierce, not vengeful. Wise." He gestured to the battle display, where human ships were systematically dismantling the hegemony fleet without destroying it. "Revenge would be easy. We could glass their worlds the way they glassed ours. But then we would become them, and Earth would have died for nothing." "So what do you become instead?" Quilm asked. "Better," Heijin answered simply. "We become what Earth taught us to be. We adapt, we survive, and we make sure that no species ever has to face what we faced." On the screen, the last hegemony dreadnought was surrendering. Its crew was being evacuated to human ships where they would be treated as prisoners of war, not as enemies to be destroyed. "Is it over?" Thrix asked. "The fighting?" "Yes, this part is over," Minho replied. "But the real work is just beginning. Do you see those news feeds? 50 worlds have declared independence in the last hour. 100 more are following. The hegemony, as a government, is collapsing." "And you'll rule in their place?" Zephyk asked. Minho laughed, and it was a sound of genuine amusement. "Rule, my friend. We spent 300 years learning to survive without rulers. Why would we want to become what we fought against?" "Then what?" Quilm asked. "Then we teach," Heijin said. "We share what we learned on Earth. How to survive without destroying others. How to be strong without being cruel. How to build something that lasts because it's worth preserving, not because you force people to preserve it." Youngsu's voice came through the speakers. "Coordinator, we're receiving messages from the liberation movements. They want to know what comes next." Minho smiled. "Tell them what we've always told them. Freedom isn't something we can give you. It's something you have to take and keep for yourselves. We're just here to make sure you get the chance." As the aliens watched, the galaxy began to change around them. The hegemony's 3,000-year reign was ending not with the destruction of worlds, but with the birth of hope. And at the center of it all were the children of Earth, keeping the promise they had made in the ashes of their burning world. 1 year later, Captain Thrix stood in what had once been the hegemony's Grand Council chamber. The massive hall that had once echoed with the commands of tyrants now buzzed with the voices of representatives from 1,000 free worlds. Each species, each culture, each planet had sent delegates to help build something new. The quiet prophet was docked outside, but Thrix was no longer just a salvager. The humans had offered him something he never expected, a chance to help build a better galaxy. His crew had accepted similar positions, using their knowledge of space lanes and hidden worlds to help coordinate the massive relief efforts. "It's hard to believe," Quilm said, joining him at one of the tall windows. Her scanner had been replaced with a datapad containing shipping manifests for medical supplies heading to former slave worlds. "A year ago, we were looking for scrap metal. Now we're helping to feed entire planets." Through the window, they could see ships from dozens of different species working together. Former hegemony vessels flew alongside human ships, their crews now free and working to repair the damage of centuries. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just months before. "The humans make it look easy," Zephyk observed. His tentacles were busy with calculations for the next supply run to the outer rim. "But changing an entire galaxy, how do they manage it?" "Practice," said a familiar voice. Tejo walked up to join them, moving more easily than he had aboard the Wandering Star. The medical technology the humans had developed during their long exile had given the old engineer new strength. "We had 300 years to figure out what went wrong with the old system." "And what did you figure out?" Thrix asked. "That the hegemony's biggest mistake wasn't being cruel," Tejo replied. "It was being lazy. They ruled through fear because fear is easy. But fear doesn't build anything lasting. It just makes people afraid to try something better." On the chamber floor below, they could see young Su addressing the assembly. He had been chosen as humanity's first ambassador to the new Galactic Council, not because he commanded the fleet, but because he understood what the humans had learned about working with others. "The Death World taught us many things," young Su was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "But the most important lesson was this: you cannot survive alone. Even on a world that tried to kill us every day, we learned that cooperation was stronger than competition." "Is he right?" Quilm asked. "Can all these different species really work together?" "They're already doing it," Heijin said, appearing beside them. The former tactical coordinator now served as a logistics specialist, helping to organize the massive effort to rebuild damaged worlds. "Look around you. Former enemies sharing resources, slave species teaching their former masters about freedom. It's messy and complicated, but it's working." Through the chamber's great windows, they could see the memorial fleet taking shape. Hundreds of ships, each one carrying the names of worlds that had been destroyed by the hegemony over the centuries. The Wandering Star was at the center, its hull now polished and gleaming, its memorial halls open to visitors from across the galaxy. "What happens to Earth?" Thrix asked. "Will you try to rebuild it?" Tejo shook his head. "Earth is gone. Even if we could restore the planet, it wouldn't be the same world that made us what we are. Besides, Earth was never just a place. It was an idea." "What kind of idea?" "That struggle makes you stronger. That surviving something terrible gives you the responsibility to make sure others don't have to survive the same thing. That being, the toughest species in the galaxy doesn't mean you have the right to rule. It means you have the duty to protect." Minho joined their group, carrying reports from across the galaxy. The former coordinator now served as an advisor to the new council, helping them avoid the mistakes that had led to the hegemony's rise. "The latest reports," he said, sharing his datapad. 87 worlds have established their own governments. 43 have formed mutual defense pacts. Only 12 are asking for human protection." "And you're giving it to them?" Quilm asked. "Temporarily," Minho replied, "until they're strong enough to protect themselves. We learned something important about power, you see. The moment you start believing you're the only ones who can solve everyone's problems, you become the problem." "So what's next for humanity?" Zephyk asked. "What we've always done," Tejo smiled. "We adapt, we survive, we explore. The galaxy is a big place, and there are still mysteries to solve. Worlds to discover. Species to meet. Some of us will stay here to help build the new order. Others will head out to the rim, seeing what's beyond the known systems. And some We'll keep the memories, added Buell Ray, joining them at the window. The wandering star will keep flying, carrying the stories of Earth and all the worlds the hegemony destroyed, making sure no one forgets the price of freedom. Young-Su's speech was ending on the chamber floor. His final words echoed up to them. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day, and we learned to make that our strength. Now we offer you the same gift, not the comfort of safety, but the strength that comes from earning your survival. The applause was thunderous, coming from representatives of species that had been enemies for millennia. But as Thrix watched, he realized it wasn't just applause for the speech, it was applause for hope. You really think this will work? He asked the humans around him. A galaxy without empires? Without someone in charge? It has to work, Minho replied simply. Because the alternative is going back to what we had before, and we've seen where that leads. Besides, Heijin added with a smile, humans are very stubborn. When we decide something is going to work, we have a tendency to make it work, whether the universe likes it or not. Through the window, they could see new ships arriving every day. Exploration vessels heading out to map unknown regions. Trade ships carrying goods between worlds that had never spoken before. Hospital ships bringing medical aid to planets still, recovering from centuries of oppression. And at the center of it all, the memorial fleet kept its vigil. Ships crewed by humans who remembered the cost of freedom, who carried the stories of the dead, and who would never let the galaxy forget that peace was something you had to fight for every single day. The Deathworld is gone, Tejo said quietly, watching the ships move across the starfield. But its children are still here, still learning, still growing, still making sure that what happened to Earth never happens to anyone else. And if someone tries, Quilm asked, if another empire rises, if someone else decides they have the right to rule the galaxy? The humans exchanged glances, and their smiles were not entirely peaceful. Then they'll learn what the hegemony learned, Young-Su said, his voice carrying up from the chamber floor as his speech concluded. That the children of Earth are very, very good at surviving, and we're even better at making sure our friends survive too. The galaxy had learned the first lesson of the Deathworld, that survival was not about being the strongest. It was about being the wisest, and wisdom, the humans had learned, was something you shared. The memorial fleet turned toward the Galactic Rim, carrying its message to the stars, that in a universe full of dangers, the greatest strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the refusal to surrender what made survival worthwhile. Earth was gone, but its legacy would endure as long as there were those who remembered that freedom was worth any price and that the strong had a duty to protect the weak. The children of the Deathworld had come home, not to rule, but to teach, and the galaxy would never be the same.